Welcome to Season 3, Episode 4, A Bloomin' Good Time.
Pleasure gardens weren't invented by the Georgians. They started appearing in the 1660s, a good few decades earlier. The monarchy had recently been restored under Charles II, who seemed much more keen to support the fun things in life than his Puritan predecessor, Oliver Cromwell. This got a big thumbs up from the general public, and thus we have the emergence of the pleasure garden. They started out as pretty walkways of trees and flowers where you could enjoy socialising and light refreshments, but they quickly evolved into full-on entertainment hubs. Art, music, rides, amusements and parties were all on offer for a very reasonable entrance fee. And for the more adventurous, the secluded winding walkways provided the opportunity for less salubrious pursuits as well. By the late 1800s, their popularity was waning. Tastes had changed and quite frankly, there were other things to do. But for now, let's go back to their heyday and put ourselves in the shoes of the average Georgian looking for some fun in London.
I would love to be the average Georgian looking for some fun in London.
Well, who would you take with you, Laura? That's the big question.
Okay, shall I consider the sources that we have on offer?
Who's the best?
Yeah. Okay, today, 4 sources. Firstly, we have an extract from the Edinburgh Encyclopedia 1830 edition. Whilst illuminating, probably not great at a party. Secondly, Frances Burney, English novelist, but also she held the court position of Keeper of the Robes. So she got to dress Queen Charlotte, right? Good dresses. Thirdly, we have an extract from the Microcosm of London, which was a shared endeavour of various art and literary types, including Thomas Rowlandson, who we've met in an earlier episode.
Is he fun?
I don't know. But then if I invite him, I probably have to invite all of them.
Yeah,
That
it gets very expensive.
Yeah, very expensive. And lastly, a visual source, which is a bill of fare from Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens. So that's no good. So I'm going to have to take Frances Burney.
But at least you'll look fantastic in your outfit.
That's true. I hope she's a hoot. Can I go first with my Edinburgh Encyclopedia extract?
Please do.
All the E's. So this is from the 1830 edition, so towards the end of the Georgian period. The garden's great attraction arises from their being splendidly illuminated at night with about 15,000 glass lamps, these being tastefully hung among the trees, which line the walks, and produce an impression similar to that which is called upon reading some of the stories in the Arabian Nights entertainments. On some occasions there have been upwards of 19,000 persons in them, and this immense concourse, most of whom are well dressed, seen in connection with the illuminated walks, add not a little to the brilliant and astonishing effect of the whole scene.
That's such a lovely image, isn't it? Lights at night, there's something quite magical about that.
It's a whole lot of lamps.
15,000.
15,000 along all the walkways. Imagine being chief of lamps.
You have to light all of those lamps.
Yeah, you have to check them all regularly.
I mean, in my office block, there's a lot of light bulbs that have gone out and have been out for a long time.
They haven't got a chief of lamps.
Clearly they're in need of one.
The image is lovely, isn't it? Imagine them in the trees, bobbing gently.
And they're different colours, aren't they, these lamps? Or the glass that the lamps are in are different colours.
Yes. So imagine a Christmas tree with the multicoloured rainbow light selection.
Old school. So everyone goes for the classic clear light now, don't they? The white light. I do like an 80s style rainbow Christmas tree.
Do you?
Yeah.
I think I would go for clear.
Not as magical though. There's something magical about multicoloured.
We talked about fairy lights there and Christmas trees, but this would have been quite unusual for the Georgians. For us, it just sounds like your regular wedding reception setup, festoon lighting.
Yeah.
But this is quite different for the Georgians. It's not something that they've seen, which is why it's being commented on in this encyclopedia.
And I guess it's a contrast to their usual grey London street setup. Well, you're in the mud and then suddenly you're transported to this fairyland that's full of light.
Correct. And did you hear the reference to Arabian Nights?
Yes, I didn't quite understand that.
So the author is comparing the scene to something from Arabian Nights, one of the tales. Now, Arabian Nights was a collection of fantasy stories set in a mix of cultures, but predominantly Greek and Persian and Turkish, Egyptian. So quite far away, quite far removed from your average Londoner. They wouldn't have visited the London mud. These are places that they wouldn't have visited, they wouldn't have had much, if any, contact with. So when these stories came out, and they only came out, the first Western publication was early 1700s, so they're quite new. They were really popular. They would have sounded very exciting and otherworldly and enticing.
Exotic.
And just exotic, yeah, very different. And I think we're sort of around the period where there's the Oriental fever and the real desire to have all of those things, to have an affinity with the East.
Well, why not, right? It's nice and warm and exotic and sunny, and you just turn around, you're covered in mud in London.
So if you haven't already guessed, I would like to talk about sight.
Okay.
So we have the lights, the beautiful bobbing lights, but also the encyclopedia talks about the well-dressed people, the 19,000 well-dressed people.
Too many, really. He did say, though, that most of them are well-dressed.
Yes, and the author is saying how they add to the excellence of the scene. And this taps into the idea that when you go to the pleasure gardens, it's a bit of a people watching opportunity. They are open to everyone. The entrance fee is relatively low, starts out at £1, does get a little bit higher as things progress and things get more impressive. But there's no restrictions on who can go. You can rub shoulders potentially with royalty. There are lots of people to see, but also you want to be seen. You're not going to go there in your tracksuit.
No.
You're going to be going there in your Sunday best.
In your finery, aren't you?
In your finery.
The author is saying that this just adds to the pleasant scene overall. So the eye is just filled with loveliness.
Yeah, delightfulness, beautiful visuals. There's nothing bad to see here.
Nothing bad. Lovely walks, lovely gardens, flowers, trees, lovely dress. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Now, £1 is about £5 in today's money, but it did increase, didn't it? I read that it went up to 3 shillings.
15 quid.
15 quid. But for the pleasure of 15 quid, you got everything included, didn't you? Apart from your food and drink, you got all that entertainment included.
And you could stay there as long as you wanted.
I was thinking if you had to liken it to something today, it would be a bit like Winter Wonderland.
Oh, maybe. An all year round Winter Wonderland.
An all year... Well, no, it was only May to August.
But it was longer than Winter Wonderland,
Sure,
is my point.
It's longer than Winter Wonderland. But with Winter Wonderland, you don't get all of the entertainments included, do you? You have to pay for each...
Oh, that's true. If you go on a ride, you'd have to pay for that, for example.
This was an all-inclusive deal at the Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens.
So really, you wanted to hang out there for a long time and get your money's worth. Now, we focused on the brightness and the lights, but also there were dark bits.
There were.
Of the gardens, the dark walks, which sound very ominous, don't they? But also allow, I would imagine, pickpockets to ply their trade as well.
Good point.
You've got all of those people there, all dressed in their finery, probably having a few drinks, inhibitions loosened. And I think you're going to find people taking advantage of those more secluded walkways to maybe rob a few purses here and there.
Probably taking advantage in more ways than one, Laura.
Yes. I think that's probably where we should leave it, with the pickpockets.
In the dark walk. So we started off with beautiful, bright, twinkling fairy lights, and you're leaving us with...
crime-ridden lanes. Yeah, it's up and down on this podcast.
Nice, though, because I will be talking about the dark walks in my extract, Laura.
How opposite.
Can you help me read mine?
Sure.
Because there's a bit of back and forth conversation.
Okay.
I want you to be the man.
Of course.
Because you have the gruffest voice. So, Laura, this is an extract from Evelina, which is a novel written by Francis Burney. This is letter 46, Evelina to the Reverend Mr. Villas, Holborn, June 17th. I followed them down a dark, long alley in which there was hardly any light. By the time we came near the end, a large party of gentlemen, appearing very riotous and who were hallooing, leaning on one another and laughing immoderately, seemed to rush suddenly from behind some trees and, meeting us face to face, put their arms at their sides and formed a circle which at first stopped our proceeding and then our retreating, for we were presently entirely enclosed. The Miss Brantons screamed aloud, and I was frightened exceedingly. Our screams were answered with bursts of laughter, and for some minutes we were kept prisoners, till at last one of them, rudely seizing hold of me, said I was a pretty little creature. Terrified to death, I struggled with such vehemence to disengage myself from him, that I succeeded in spite of his efforts to detain me, and with a swiftness which fear only could have given me, I flew up the walk, hoping to secure my safety by returning to the lights and company we had so foolishly left. But before I could possibly accomplish my purpose, I was met by another party of men. In a moment, both my hands by different persons were caught hold of, and one of them, in a most familiar manner, accompanied me in a race, while the rest of them stood still and laughed. I was almost distracted with terror, and so breathless with running, that I could not speak, till another advancing said I was as handsome as an angel. I just then articulated, "For heaven's sake, gentlemen, let me pass!" Another then suddenly rushing forward exclaimed,
"Heaven and earth, what voice is that?" "The voice of the prettiest little actress I have seen this age,"
answered one of my persecutors. No, 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 I panted out, "I'm no actress. Pray let me go, pray let me pass." Just a little stage note, here she recognises one of the men. "Sir Clement Willoughby," cried I. "Oh, sir, assist me, or I shall die with terror."
"Gentlemen,"
cried he, disengaging them all from me in an instant.
"pray leave this lady to me."
But one of them, in a passionate manner, vowed he would not give me up, for that he had the first right to me.
"You are mistaken,"
said Sir Clement.
"This lady is, I will explain myself to you another time, but I assure you, you are all mistaken."
And then taking my willing hand, he led me off. He caught my hand and eagerly pressing it in a passionate voice said,
"Oh, that I had sooner met with thee."
Surprised at a freedom so unexpected, I angrily broke from him, saying, "Is this the protection you give me, Sir Clement?" And then I saw that he had led me into another of the dark alleys instead of the place whither I meant to go. "Good God!" I cried, "where am I? What way are you going?"
"Where,"
answered he,
"we shall be least observed." My word.
Dirty bugger.
Well, that was fraught.
Poor Evelina.
I know, she's trying to... Well, she thought she'd been saved by Sir Clement. Apparently not.
Lots of things happening here, and we're going to think about touch. Lots of touching going on. Unsolicited touching. Firstly, they're heading off into the dark walks. We've mentioned these. The less well-lit areas of the pleasure gardens, where one might go to... if one was looking for a good time.
You could just hang around
in the shadows.
In the shadows, looking for a good time. Or if you were with your paramour,
yes,
you too, consentingly,
yes,
could go off into the shadows.
For a fumble.
For a bit of a fumble.
Yeah.
I'm down with that. That's okay.
Oh my God, Mum and Dad, please don't listen to that. So they're dark, they're overhanging foliage, enclosed. It would have felt noticeably cooler, I think.
And none of the lights, of course, bringing off the heat.
Very dark, so you might have to feel where you're going, you know, put your hands out in front of you maybe in some areas, so you don't walk into branches or humans accidentally on purpose maybe. It's a risque area of the gardens.
It's a bit more shadowy.
In all senses.
Yeah.
Evelina did go there in a group of ladies, and for society ladies at least, it was okay to be in a group.
Without a chaperone.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's also an area for prostitutes, and it seems that Evelina is either mistaken for a prostitute at some point, or at least Mr. Clement thinks that she's open to some fun. Firstly, she's encircled by this group of men, which doesn't sound fun at all.
No, sounds quite aggressive.
The three ladies are circled by this group of men, breathing in their faces. They're all really close, and they keep them trapped for a few minutes, which, if you think about it, is actually quite a long time.
That's a long time if you don't want to be there.
And they're just laughing at them. They're screaming, and the men are laughing. Not nice. Then one of the men grabs her. She has to use a lot of force to get away from him. And she does eventually manage to get away with him, and unfortunately then runs off into the arms of another group of men. They all grab her by the hands and mockingly run with her. So it's very clear that if she were trying to run, they would be able to outrun her very easily.
So she's completely out of control here. They are asserting their dominance. If they wanted to, they could do whatever they wanted.
And she's very aware of that. She's frightened to death. She can't get away. However, there is one reassuring touch in all of this, because Mr. Clement Willoughby appears and notices her by her voice, and then she willingly gives him her hand and he takes her away. Unfortunately, though, even this touch turns a bit unsettling, because he then leads her into the darker areas of the woods instead of towards the exit, because he thinks that she's up for some canoodling.
Does he really think that, though? I mean, she's clearly trying to get away from these people. He's just taking advantage, right?
Well, he saw her on her own. he didn't know that she was with the other ladies and had been separated. Which is why one of his partners says that he had the first right to her. It seems that Mr. Clement Willoughby is not keeping the best company.
No.
That's why they think that she's an actress. And by the way, I'm saying actress in inverted commas, which means prostitute. She has to say, I'm not an actress, you're mistaken. And that's when he appears, you see. So they think she's fair game.
Yeah.
And he thinks maybe she's up for something.
Right, I'm with you. It's interesting, isn't it, how just in this different setting, behaviours and moral standards have completely changed. These are all gentlemen, presumably, or nice young men, whatever their status, but they're behaving very differently and very aggressively to this young lady.
Because they think that she's a prostitute.
Yeah, even though she's saying she's not.
Yes, exactly, yeah. But it's quite weird that if you're in a group of women, that's okay. That means you're not a prostitute. But if you're on your own, that's a whole different ballgame.
So that visual of you being on your own near the dark walks, especially, goodness, fraught with danger. Next, we're going to transport ourselves into the Microcosm of London. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Not really, no.
No. This was a collaborative work in 3 volumes produced across the years 1808 to 1810. And it was a shared endeavour of various artists, engravers, editors, authors, and they created a compendium of scenes of London, which were engravings, etchings, and accompanying texts about each of those bits. They mentioned theatres, pleasure gardens, various landmarks in London. So almost like, imagine you get one of those pocketbooks today, the top 20 things to do in London. That
sure,
sort of thing.
yeah, okay, with a picture and then a description.
Yeah.
Should I be thinking about a particular sense?
Yes. I would like you to think about sound. This is from Volume 3 of the Microcosm of London, 1808 to 1810. At the end of the first act of the grand concert, which is usually about 10 o'clock, a bell is rung by way of signal for the exhibition of a beautifully illuminated scene called the Cascade. A dark curtain is then drawn up, which discloses a very natural view of a bridge, a watermill, and a cascade. A noise similar to the roaring of water is also well imitated, while coaches, wagons, soldiers, and other figures are exhibited crossing the bridge with the greatest regularity. This agreeable piece of scenery continues about 10 minutes.
Okay, few questions.
Yeah. What's a cascade?
Yeah.
It's a waterfall.
Oh, right. Okay, so a curtain goes up and then there's a waterfall that is a real waterfall?
Well, there's a scene, and that scene has the bridge, the watermill, a waterfall, people, coaches, wagons crossing the bridge.
Real people?
No.
Oh.
No. But what I want you to focus on is the sound.
Yeah.
So it's an exhibition called the Cascade, and it's referred to that in the sources.
Now, they said there that they imitated the sound of rushing water.
Yes. What happened was tin sheets on belts and a team of people operating a mechanism, as in manually turning wheels.
Thin tin sheets of metal, and I guess if you wibble them, it does make a kind of roaring noise.
Something like that. I think we need to not dwell too much on the
mechanics.
actual mechanics of it. But there was a team of people behind the scenes, probably behind the dark curtain.
Very Wizard of Oz.
It's a bit, yeah. And actually, interestingly, a couple of the sources refer to it as roaring. I mean, to me, that sounds unpleasantly loud. And apparently it went on for 15 minutes.
Every night?
Every night, and only once a night.
Right.
And it was a big draw. People wanted to come and see this. That's why they rang the bell at the beginning. Do you remember that?
I do.
Yeah, so they rang the bell, and this happened after the opening act of the grand concert. So it's part of the main event, 9-10 o'clock.
Time to see a fake waterfall.
Yeah.
I don't think it's something that I would necessarily want to go and see, but maybe it's fantastic. You know, when we went to America when we were very young and we watched Waltzing Waters?
Yes.
On paper, that does sound quite lame, but in reality, I thought it was quite lovely. So it was basically fountains dancing to music.
Yeah, with different colours.
I'm imagining something like that, but worse.
No, I think you're on the right track. There was apparently some snazzy lighting that accompanied it. So you've got the visuals, you've got the lighting, obviously the scene, you've got the sound.
Which is very oppressive then, this roaring 15 minutes of metal being shaken around.
It sounds terrible, doesn't it? It sounds too loud. It sounds too long at 15 minutes, though presumably you didn't have to hang around for the full 15 if you didn't want to. But some other contemporary descriptions are quite favourable. One says, a pleasing and surprising effect on both the eye and the ear. And then another, that it delights and surprises. They do change up the scenery.
Okay.
So to keep people interested, it wasn't always the bridge and the wagons.
Right, so the main draw then is this fake waterfall.
I think it's the fake waterfall, yeah. And apparently later on, they introduce a scene that involves a storm.
I'd prefer that one to people crossing a bridge.
Yeah.
A storm, that's a bit exciting. It's a bit like the Tempest.
Yeah, that's true. I think probably my favourite thing was that it was referenced by many contemporaries as the waterworks as well as the cascade, which reminded me of crying and also going to the toilet.
So at 10 o'clock every night, there's a big toilet that flashes. Come and watch.
Would you go and watch that?
I would actually. Sounds quite fun.
And that's where we will leave it.
My final extract today, Laura, we're sticking with Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens. There are others.
There are others.
We've not mentioned any of them. One of my favourite things is that because it's on the south side of the river, you have to get there by boat.
Yes.
Which adds to the magic of the whole experience, doesn't it?
Even though it wasn't actually exclusive, it must have felt like it kind of was.
Yeah, getting in a little boat, paying the ferryman, arriving on the other side, seeing the lights emerge out of the darkness. It is a whole sensory experience, isn't it? A trip to the pleasure gardens.
Definitely.
I digress. My final source is a bill of fare from 1823, which is another name for a menu. The bill of fare is a long piece of rectangular paper, and at the top it says Vauxhall Royal Gardens, 1923, and then you've got some areas that you can fill in. Your waiter's name, your box number, and the date. Then there is a list of food items with their corresponding prices, and underneath a list of drinks with their corresponding prices. And the idea is that your waiter would fill in the amount next to each item that you've purchased so that there's a fair and honest record of what you have bought to eat at the gardens and drink, of course, and what you've consumed and therefore pay for.
Okay.
These bills of fare were also posted up around the venue so that there could be no diddling.
Ah, okay.
You see?
So everyone knew exactly what everything costed. Okay.
I'm going to run through some items on offer here, Laura.
Okay.
You've got sugar, plate of sugar.
Plate?
Plate of sugar, do you want
Okay. That seems a lot of sugar, but fine.
that? £1.50 in new money. An egg, 50p. Bread, 30p.
One slice?
One slice of bread. A few other things. Candles. If you wanted a pair of candles for your table, that would cost you £7.
But what about the 15,000 lamps that are hanging around?
You might be on a date and you might want to splash out on some wax
I've
candles.
got you an egg and a pair of candles.
Spent 50p on an egg for you.
£7 on the wax lights. That's a lot.
It's a lot, isn't it? Some of the drinks. Bottle of claret will cost you about £30.
Goodness.
The champagne there, 14 shillings. Today's money, that's about £45. So what we're getting the sense of is that it's quite expensive.
A slice of cheese costs more than an egg.
It is 75p for a slice of cheese is a lot.
It is, yeah.
I kind of equate it like going to the theatre now. It's overpriced food.
Yeah.
But it's part of the experience.
And you're a captive audience. Yeah. Unless you're smuggling in your own sandwiches in your pockets.
And I think you could actually do that. You could bring a picnic. But again, if you're trying to impress somebody, and like we said earlier, it's all about being seen and seeing people.
Yeah, you want to be in the box and ordering the swish stuff, don't you?
You want to be the 45 bottle of champagne, don't you? Let's be honest. It's also a bit stingy if you don't buy the food, if you're on a date with somebody.
Oh, if you're on a date, you absolutely have to.
You'd definitely get the wax candles and the plate of sugar, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Right, so there are various complaints about the food. I mean, it's a bit of a trope that people go on about how expensive it is. In Evelina, actually, they complain about the food and how expensive it is, and yet they finish everything on their plates, right? You complain about it, but you still eat it anyway.
And you don't actually then complain to the waiter.
It's interesting you say that, though, Laura, because included on this bill of fare are some very clear instructions. If any person experiences inattention or incivility from the waiters, it is hoped application will be made at the bar that he may be reprimanded or, if requisite, dismissed. The waiters were not employed by the pleasure gardens. They worked for themselves. And the thing they had to do was order the food from the bar and pay for it themselves up front.
Right.
And then they recoup the money when you pay at the end.
Ah, right.
This did lead to a lot of people running off.
Yeah, that sounds convoluted and ripe for abuse as a system.
Yeah, not fun for the waiters because they do have to rely on their customers to be upstanding. Waiters pretty much relied on tips, therefore. So if they had to buy the food and all the prices were very clearly advertised, they couldn't diddle you, they couldn't charge extra, they very much relied on tips. Let's say you're on a date. You might tip the waiter, slide him a shilling to get you the best box and to give you a bit more attention. But remember that you could complain about the waiters and they could get fired.
Okay, so even though they were sort of self-employed, the gardens could say, well, you can't come back and operate here
anymore. Let's think about the food on offer. Very basic, very English.
It is very English. I mean, I had 2 of these things for lunch.
Very patriotic. So you've got your cold meats, you've got an egg, you've got some bread and cheese.
Cucumber,
some lettuce.
Yeah.
Potentially all the makings of a salad. So you get a plate of olive oil if you want. Nothing spicy, nothing complex on the palate. We wouldn't want to confuse the English with spice.
Fair amount of protein.
Yeah, okay. I'm glad you're looking for the positives here.
Yeah.
The olives, I guess, could be arguably the most continental thing on offer.
Yes.
But importantly, there's no hot food.
No.
It's very quick, very high turnover. It's very much getting people fed as quickly as possible so the next group of people can sit down and eat some expensive cheese.
Yeah.
The drinks are more interesting, definitely less English. You've got champagne, Burgundy, you've got French things, for goodness sake.
Goodness.
They're a war on. They've also got Arak Punch. Now, Arak Punch is what Vauxhall Pleasure Gardens were famous for. A very, very strong punch cocktail.
Nice.
Joss in Vanity Fair drinks far too much punch.
Oh, okay.
And gets a hangover. Now, Arak is from Sri Lanka. It's a spicy, citrusy, sweet, fermented sugarcane alcohol. A pint of Arak Punch costs 20 quid. That's a lot.
That is. I mean, this is more expensive than dining out these days.
I think it's the alfresco dining experience, because if we think back to the Georgian times, this was a novelty. Dining outside is a bit of a novelty. They would have sat in these dining boxes and there was art on the walls. This is before art galleries existed. But yeah, the fact that you've got art on the walls before art galleries were really a thing is quite a nice little addition. This would have been quite a draw as well. You've got the lights, you're in these little sheltered boxes underneath the bandstand. I don't know if it was super loud or ridiculous. We are talking about taste though, Laura.
Yes, go back to taste.
Well, to be fair, art is fashionable taste. It's all tied into the same thing, isn't it?
Talking about just what you could do there, though. Go and have a lovely meal. You could go and have a fumble if you wanted. Pre or post. It's fine. And the art was a draw. Hot air balloon ascents. Tightrope walking.
And all for £5. This is all included, all your entertainments. You've got orchestras playing, you've famous singers performing. What an evening out.
Yes. I would, though, make sure that I prepared my picnic beforehand.
Oh, you're such a cheapskate.
Got a few flasks of wine or gin and brought them along. And then it would be an even more good night out. Anyway, shall we finish with a quiz?
Goodness me, yes. So, really, I'm going to have Francis Burney. And can I also have Joss from Vanity Fair? Because I feel like he's a fun guy.
Yeah, I think he knows the Pleasure Gardens inside out.
Okay, so they're my team.
Okay, great. 6 points available today. 4 questions. Number 1. Could you get breakfast at the Pleasure Gardens? Yes or no?
No.
Yes. Well, definitely some of them. Breakfast was available in some places.
Oh.
Number 2, what do these words relate to? Something you could find at the gardens. The words are pyramids and sun and stars. 3 options here. Are we talking about fireworks? Are we talking about cakes? Or are we talking about dances?
Let's talk about fireworks.
Correct.
Yeah.
Well done. Question 3. True or false? At one point, Vauxhall Gardens had an aqueduct that supplied the pond.
False?
True!
Wow.
Own aqueduct.
I want my own aqueduct.
Number 4, final question. 3 points are available here. I would like you to name 3 entertainments not already mentioned in the quiz on offer at your average pleasure garden. So you can't mention fireworks or dancing.
Okay, so you could listen to the orchestra.
Yeah?
You could eat. Does that count?
Actually, no, because I mentioned cake, so no, you can't have that.
Cascades.
Correct, yeah.
And you could also go up in a hot air balloon.
I don't know if you could go up, but you could watch it go up.
Oh.
But I'm going to let you have that. So you got 4 out of 6.
Not bad.
Very good. Well done. Thank you for joining us today on our jaunt around the pleasure gardens. If you like what you heard, then please do take the time to like, rate, subscribe or share wherever you download your podcasts. And remember, you can get in touch with us via our email, website or on our social media. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.